We welcome in right now Vince Candelora. Vince, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
Are you surprised?
I'm not. I'm mildly surprised because I know the speaker really wanted to get this done before session, but it didn't seem as if the Senate hadn't really weighed in, and I think it's a tall order. The longer this goes and the more people start understanding the impacts, there's just a lot of reservation and a lot of questions.
So what happened? I mean, I don't know if it's all Democrats who have these conversations, but can you take us through the order of operations?
Yeah, I think what happened, obviously, is we know that the regs were withdrawn from the governor. As a result of him withdrawing it, the only option really is to try to get these things passed legislatively because that committee refused to do it, essentially. We should be going in my opinion, into regular session to fully debate it because there's a choice here. You could choose the federal standards or you could choose California, and we should have that conversation. The governor really wants the California standards, so the speaker tried to get this done before session, and I think they don't want this taking up the entire session, which is it's going to take up a lot of time. So I think that's why he was pushing it. He was also trying to address the issues that people have and recognizing that we need a commission maybe to look at this and then come back and maybe try to revote and take a second bite of the apple.
Right.
I think you have three camps. You have one camp that says, let's go federal standards. You have another camp that says, let's do something less than California. Let's allow for hybrids, which you can't do, but people want a half a loaf. And then you have the camp that wants all in on California standards. And so the environmentalists weren't happy, the moderates weren't happy, and then the people that want federal weren't happy. So it divided the pie too much, and he couldn't get the votes.
Now, I try not to look at this as like an R versus D thing and a victory. I look at it more from a people's perspective because now you can hopefully get public hearings. But, I thought that Speaker Ritter's compromises sounded pretty fair, like a revote and all this other stuff. I mean, what would stand in the way of something like that?
So I think the devil's in the detail, but I think what stood in the way of that is I think that you have people, I know the commissioner wants all in. So they don't want to revote. They don't want a commission to look at benchmarks.
So it's more like the progressive side had a problem with that.
Yeah, the zero emission people had a problem with that. And so it wasn't, Republicans never even gave him votes or even weighed in, but I think that divided it.
Right.
And the devil's in the details. I'm not sure we legally could do it. How do you bind a future legislature and say you need to come in and vote? I think the only way you do that is you say you pass it into statute and you sunset the statute so that if you don't go back in, the law goes away. And that could be a problem too. So I think those details really need to be flushed out and people need to be convinced that we would be getting a second bite. But I tend to think we should just go the federal route, which is sort of the same thing. Go the federal route, create a commission, and study it. Because you could always switch back to the California standards later on if you think they're going to work. But I think California is even going to have to peel back. Yeah. They're too aggressive.
And I also think we're talking with Vince Candelora, Republican House Leader here on Brian and Company. I think that, the infrastructure build out, depending on how much you commit to it, regardless of what you do in session, should happen anyway because more people are buying these vehicles and you need to help them. So that is almost a separate issue unless you want to explode it and put a ton of money into it. But you said something earlier that I think really is the biggest issue in some ways, not aside from the actual EV thing, is this could end up taking up a lot of oxygen in the session. And that could be a negative in terms of getting other stuff done.
Yeah, it really could. I mean, I think it's a serious issue, but so is our budget, and so you want to try to be able to balance it. And it's a short session, so we're out May 8th. We don't go into February 7th, and it will take some time to do.